And I was born in Pennsylvania, around Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I went to a little bit of school, not a school like this, but I went to a school with a one room in it, had 4 grades in one room. Each row was a grade. In the back of the room we had a pot-belly stove, which we needed. That's what that. Like, I come from a community of about maybe 50 people. It was a small community in the outskirts. I had 10 years of schooling. I couldn't get the last 2 years. I should have got it after the war. But I didn't do it. I was married. In 1943, Uncle Sam says he needs me. That's when the war broke out. When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, of course, they started a draft, which a draft means that when they need you, they tell you, they just point their finger at you. They send you a little card, tells you that what classification you're in. Of course, I was in 1A, and that means you're ready to go in. And of course, I got married 2 weeks before I went in. It was in 1943. I've been married 59 years. We went into the service. We took our basic training in Camp Van Dorn, Mississippi, which we called the asshole of the world. Pardon my expression. That's what we called it. Somebody here is from Mississippi.
He's not from Mississippi, just lived there, right?
Used to live in Mississippi. Yeah, he was born in Mississippi. Well, anyhow, we took our basic training in Camp. We was called. When we first got there, we seen the big sign that says combat engineers, but we thought we was going to run trains, you know, because it was engineers. But we didn't see the combat in front of it. So we took our basic training in Camp Van Dorn, Mississippi, and this man behind me was my lieutenant, so you'll meet him later. He'll tell you his story. But anyhow, we took our basic training in Camp Van Dorn, then we took our maneuvers in the swamps of Louisiana. Is anybody from Louisiana around here? Well, anyhow, we took our maneuvers there before we went overseas. And when we was in Louisiana, when you took your training in the swamps of Louisiana, and every night we would come in from our training, we'd have to take our clothes off, and your buddy would take a cigarette to get the leeches off your back. They used to sink their head into your skin and suck your blood, see, and underneath your clothes, because you're in the swamps. So every night we'd have to take our clothes off, and your buddy would get the leeches off you. And so after we went through our basic training, then they needed some demolition men, so they sent me up to Camp Swift, Texas, for 6 weeks of demolition, which wasn't bad, just blowing up obstacles and stuff like that. We didn't know what we was getting into. And then when that was done, we went back down to Camp Van Dorn, and then he shipped us into New York to take us overseas. We went overseas in December of 1943, yeah, right. And we went into Scotland, come down from Scotland into England, and we bivouacked in the woods there in England for about, I guess we was there for probably 6 weeks to 8 weeks. Then they said they needed demolition men down in Gloucester, England, down on the coast. So it just happened to be I was a demolition man. So they sent me down to Gloucester, England, and prepared us for the invasion of Normandy, which we took training in the 27-man boat teams. That's your landing crafts that has the ramp in the front that goes down and you take off. Well, they did us there for 6 weeks training, running out on the channel and running back in again on these little boats and going up and simulating blowing these obstacles, which they call Belgian gates. We're going to end up a little bit later on that because Dina knows all about that. And we took training there for 6 weeks, then we prepared for the invasion. And when they took us out on June the 5th, across the channel, we towed a little landing craft behind our LCI, which was a big boat which held maybe a couple thousand men. Well, when we get out, after you get out there so far, you get down a rope ladder into this little landing craft. That's what takes you into the beach. Well, we trained there for 6 weeks, and then we got ready. We went out on June the 5th. The weather was too bad. We couldn't go in. So they took us back into England again. And we stayed there for another 8 to 10 hours. So Eisenhower says we got to go regardless of the because we had such a massive troop in ships. We had thousands and thousands of troops, ships, planes and everything. The whole channel was black with ships. And so we went back in on June the 5th. We took back out on the night of June the 5th. We hit the beach at 6:30 on June the 6th. We went, well, you want to get it right on?
Okay, I'm going to stop right here, and then I have just a little segment of the video I want you to see, which is exactly what he's talking about. The night of June the 5th, the morning of June the 6th. And I know some of you might have already seen this video, but it's just a short clip. So you're going to have to get in a position with this.
They were so close together, they could just be going from one to the other. They were that close. Our group led the first invasion mission. We were the leaders going over the beach that day, and our target time was at 6:10, and we dropped our bombs at 6:10 in the morning.
Go back, can't go forward, we're stuck up. The ensign, he's trying to get this thing motor going, get us off. We couldn't get off. So they told us we have to get off. So it's about 4 feet of water. So they taught us in England how to get off of a landing craft is to go over the side. Well, I was about the 10th guy in the rear, and we're all trying to get off this landing craft to get into the water. We're carrying 60 pounds of C2, which is a demolition. It's like putty, and you can only explode it with a detonating cap. And so we're carrying 60 pounds of demolition, a fuel pack, a rubber gas mask on our leg, and a fuel pack on our back, and a rifle, M1 rifle. Well, when I went out, instead of me going over the side like a dummy, I went out over the, well, when I was so scared and, you know, everything, bullets flying everywhere, I went out over the front with a lieutenant behind me. It wasn't, not this man here, but my lieutenant was a big guy, and he was right behind me. And as I went out over the front, the suction pulled me back under with all the weight I had on me. So he reached down, he grabbed me by the pack, and he pulled me back up onto there, and he says, "Mr. Watson," he says, "I don't mind you don't drown." He said, "I don't mind you getting shot on the beach, but don't drown," you know. So we worked our way into the beach. Of course, he didn't quite make it into the beach. He got hit before he got into the beach. We lost our radio man, our medic. We lost them before we got into the beach. And our job was to blow these Belgium gates on the beach. The Belgium gates are a big crossbar of iron. You'll see it on the video. Our job there was to blow them up, but we trained in England to do this. So before we got in there, our Navy was still shelling our beach and the top of the beach where the pillboxes were. Well, a Navy shell lit about 15, 20 feet from us, a 16-inch gun. We figured it was that. And the last thing I remember then was just a big ball of fire, you know. And then when I woke up, the medic was swabbing my mouth out. And of course, I lost all my rear teeth. So my two buddies next to me, they was both killed on it. So we never got it blowed, but we had to try to blow the seawall because there was a great big seawall there, which was, and here all these troops are coming in, infantry, your tanks, and everything's piling up on this beach, and they can't get over the wall because it's 25 feet high and 20 feet thick. So then the next job was to get these bandolier into the long pipes that they screw together, and they're all filled with demolition. And the job was to try to get these things under that wall to get a gap blowed in that wall so we could try to get through. So the remaining of us tried to get up to the wall. When we finally got it blowed, we blowed a gap in at about 10 feet wide, about enough to get through. Well, everything started to pull through this gap. The first thing the Germans did was to put a machine gun on that gap. You know? Well, of course, there's so much manpower in that we finally got through there and eliminated the machine gun. I guess the infantry eliminated the machine gun. And then after we got in there, they started to spread out. Yeah, so I don't recall too much after that. But I know that pillbox that we took, I spent the first night in that pillbox. And we went down after they got inland about a mile or two. Well, that night we went down to the beach where all this was going on. And as far as your eye could see against the seawall was dead American soldiers. As far as your eye could see. Just lined up there. They had them lined up against the wall, you know. And a lot of them was killed by our own troops. Our own tanks ran over the wounded, you know, because they was all trying to get through this gap in the seawall. And but that's where I spent my first night in there. And then the next morning we got up. Of course, we had no outfit. There was only 27 of us, and there were 7 of us left after the first day, after the first battle. And next morning we got up and we started to roam around. We started to take K rations off of the dead soldiers and that, because they had no use for them. You know, I mean that was the only way to survive, because you didn't have any supplies coming in and all that at that time. So what we did, we took the morphine shots off of them, and we used them too, because if you was wounded, you had to use not your morphine, but the guy's morphine that was wounded. See, so we used them quite a bit in there, and so we roamed around there for. My outfit come in, what was it, 27 days later? They come in about 27 days later. Me and a buddy of mine from Pittsburgh area, we roamed around Normandy there to our outfit put in, so we roamed around with the 101st Airborne and just eating what we could, picking up what we could off the land, you know, and helping out whenever we had a chance to with the Airborne Division. I was going to tell them about the glider troops too. You know, there was so much. They had so much of a build-up there that if you're from France, or back in Normandy, there, what Hitler did, he took on all the open fields. He took and put telephone poles up and pointed them and spaced them right off. And we brought thousands of glider troops in. You know what a glider is? A glider is a plane with no motor. It's pulled by another plane, and the glider is filled with troops, and they pulled them across the channel. And their job was to land these gliders in them open fields. But here, when they cut them airplanes loose, them guys, poor guys, had nowhere to go but into them poles. They just tore the wings off and up through the fuselage. And them guys really took a beat behind the line. But before I go any further, the 101st Airborne was dropped in at 2:30 in the morning on June the 6th. They were dropped in behind the enemy lines, behind the beaches. They was dropped in by St. Mary Glees, but here a lot of them got in the wrong area. They dropped them, and some of them was dropped in. We had a paratrooper last year with us here, 2 years ago with us. But he's not here today. But he was one of the guys that was dropped in behind the lines. And they really there was only about, I think, a quarter of them left out of a whole division after the first day of battle.
If you've seen Band of Brothers, the Band of Brothers is based on the 101st Airborne Division.
Yeah. And so we roamed around in there for 27 days. Then I hooked up with my old outfit again, and then we worked our way up through France. Our job was to build bridges and pick any booby traps and landmines and stuff like that we was trained to do. And so we get up to the. Do you want to take over?
Sure.
Okay. So you can continue through France now. Okay. Go ahead.